What if the Great Wall of China was built to contain something? You're here now, and I want you to take a deep breath. And another. Let the day loosen its grip on you. Whatever weight you've been carrying, set it down for a while. This is your time to rest, to drift, to let the past wash over you like a gentle tide. Relax your shoulders, let your jaw soften. Feel the rhythm of your breath slow. Maybe you're lying in bed, maybe curled up on the couch, maybe even swaying in a hammock somewhere under the stars. Wherever you are tonight, I'd love to know. Tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Because in this quiet moment, across distance and time, we're connected by the same story. Now, close your eyes if you can. Imagine yourself standing alone in a vast and silent landscape. The air is cool, and the wind carries with it the scent of pine resin and old stone. Before you, rising and falling with the shape of the land, is the Great Wall of China. It stretches away in both directions so far that the horizon swallows it in a hazy blue mist. In the fading light of dusk, the wall doesn't look like the bustling tourist site you've seen in photographs. Here, it's lonely, ancient, almost breathing. Your hand touches the stone, rough and cold under your fingertips. The surface has been worn smooth in some places, as if countless hands warriors, travellers, builders have pressed against it across centuries. You can hear the wind curling through broken battlements, making a sound that's not quite a whistle, not quite a sigh. It's the kind of sound that belongs to a place that remembers. Above you, the sky is the deep colour of ink, and the first stars begin to appear. Their pale light catches on the edges of the wall, turning the stones into a jagged ribbon of silver and shadow. The mountains in the distance loom like dark, sleeping giants, their peaks fading into the night. Somewhere out there, a lone bird calls, its cry sharp and brief before it's swallowed by silence again. And in this stillness, there's something else. A presence. Not a person, not an animal, but the feeling that the wall itself is watching you. The weight of it presses down, not threatening, but immense, like standing in the presence of something that has been here for longer than you can truly imagine. You step forward slowly, your footsteps muffled by the dust that has settled over the centuries. Each stone beneath your feet feels deliberate, purposeful. You wonder who laid them here and why. History will tell you one story, a practical one, an official one. But in this moment, staring down the spine of this colossal structure, you feel another question begin to rise in your mind. What if the Great Wall was never meant just to keep enemies out? What if its true purpose was to keep something in? The thought slips into your mind as easily as a shadow at dusk. You look again at the watchtowers standing like silent sentinels, their narrow windows staring not outward, toward the steps, but inward, toward the heart of China. You notice how some stretches of the wall cling to the edges of cliffs, as if to seal them off completely, even where no army could ever march. You notice places where the path curves in strange ways, angles that seem more about enclosing than defending. A gust of wind brushes past you, and for a heartbeat you think you hear something. Low, deep, and distant rolling through the stones themselves. It's probably just the wind, you tell yourself, but the sound lingers in your mind like a half-remembered dream. The air grows colder. You pull your coat tighter and glance up at the vast dark sky. The stars are clearer now, and they feel closer somehow, as if leaning in to listen. You breathe in, and the scent of pine is mixed now with something else. Something metallic, like iron left out in the rain. You wonder how many have stood here before you in this exact spot, feeling the same shiver of curiosity, the same hum beneath their feet. The wall, in the dim light, no longer looks like just stone and mortar. It looks like a scar across the land, or maybe a seam. And what do seams do? They hold something together. They keep something from coming apart, or they keep something from escaping. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the thought settle into you. This isn't the busy, crowded landmark from travel guides. This is an ancient creature slumbering in plain sight. You can feel its age in your bones. It has seen empires rise and fall, seen men fight and die, seen the seasons change 1,000 times, and still it stands, watching, waiting. Far off, in the deepest part of the mountains, the wall disappears into shadow. No lights, no sound, just the darkness. It's there, in that unlit distance, that your mind keeps drifting. What lies beyond? What lies within? Tonight, you don't need to answer. Tonight, you only need to walk beside me into the quiet heart of the past. Let the wall guide us. Let the wind tell its story. We'll follow it together, step by slow step, deeper into the mystery. And as your body softens into the rhythm of your breath and your eyes grow heavier, we begin the journey, not just along the length of the Great Wall, but into the layers beneath its stones. Layers of history, and perhaps something more, something that has been waiting for us to remember. Now, just keep breathing, keep listening. The night is young, and the story is only beginning. The air is cooler now, as if the sun's final warmth has been tucked away behind the jagged mountains. The quiet deepens until it feels like the world has pressed a finger to its lips. You stand there, the great wall stretching away like a living shadow, and the thought lingers in your mind like the aftertaste of a dream. What if it was never meant to keep people out, but to keep something in? Your hand remains on the stone, tracing the grooves where time has bitten into it. You notice how the surface is uneven, patched here and there with bricks that don't quite match the rest. It's a patchwork of centuries, of different hands, different rulers, all continuing the same work. You wonder, did they all know the same secret? Or were they building for reasons they themselves didn't fully understand, passing down a duty older than memory? The wind changes direction, brushing past you from the north. It carries with it a taste dry, almost bitter, like the breath of a long-forgotten cave. You picture the endless expanse of a land beyond the wall, stretching into deserts and frozen plains, wild and untouched. It's beautiful, but in the fading light, there's also something unsettling about its emptiness. The kind of emptiness that hides things. You take a few steps along the wall. The pathway beneath your feet is uneven, and some stones tilt slightly, as if they've shifted over the centuries. Here, the wall is narrower, flanked by towers that rise like ancient guards. Each tower is hollow and silent now, the wood of its floors long gone, the windows black and unblinking. You pause before one of these openings and peer inside. The air is colder in there. It smells faintly of soot, though no fire has burned here for lifetimes. And then you notice its scratches on the inner wall, deep grooves worn into the stone. They're too erratic to be the marks of tools, too jagged. They run from the floor almost to the ceiling, as though something had clawed at the stone, desperate to get out, or in. Your breath catches for a moment. You lean closer, running your fingers along the grooves. The edges are smooth now, worn down by time, but the shapes are still there. Whatever made them, it was strong. You step back, the tower looming above you, and you wonder if anyone else has noticed. If the tourists who walk here during the day see only a photo opportunity, the lines in the stone just another relic. But here, in the quiet, with only the whisper of the wind, they feel different. The path ahead dips and rises with the contours of the hills. You follow it. The stones under your boots shifting slightly with each step. The rhythm of walking becomes hypnotic, your thoughts falling into step with the sound of your breath. The further you go, the less the wall feels like a boundary. It begins to feel like something else, like a ring, a circle drawn around a sleeping thing. The moon is rising now, pale and watchful above you. Its light reveals the wall in sharper detail, the way some of the stones are darker, almost black, as though scorched long ago. The way certain towers lean inward ever so slightly, as if resisting some pressure from the inside. In the distance you see another tower, this one lower, broader, with a heavy gate at its base. The wood of the gate is ancient, cracked, but still whole. It looks like it hasn't been opened in centuries. Iron bands hold it in place, rust blooming across them like old blood. You stop before it. There's no handle on your side, only a narrow slit, barely wide, enough to peer through. Beyond it there's nothing but darkness. You listen, holding your breath, and for a moment you think you hear something on the other side. Not movement exactly, more like breathing. It's faint, almost indistinguishable from the sound of the wind. But it's there, and the hairs on your arms lift. You step back slowly, not from fear exactly, but from a deep, instinctive sense of respect. Whatever is beyond that gate, it has been there a very long time. The official story will tell you the wall is a defensive masterpiece, a testament to human perseverance and ingenuity. And that's true in a way, but standing here, in this moonlit silence, you sense another truth woven into the mortar, a truth that feels older than the dynasties themselves. You begin to imagine the builders, thousands of them, hauling stone through the dust, under orders they didn't question. Perhaps they believed they were protecting their homes from invasion. But what if the emperor, or those who came before him, knew something else? What if there were stories told only in the deepest chambers of the palace, warnings written in scripts long since lost? What if the wall wasn't just a line of defense, but a lock? You take another deep breath, letting the night air fill your lungs. The thought is both thrilling and unsettling. You glance again at the gate, the rusted iron catching the moonlight, and you can almost imagine what it would feel like if it were to open. What sound it would make. What would emerge from the dark beyond? But it stays closed. The wall stays silent, and you keep walking. The path climbs now, higher and higher, until you reach a point where you can see the wall, stretching endlessly in both directions. It's a serpent of stone, winding over ridges and vanishing into valleys. From here, it feels alive. You can almost believe it's holding its breath. Below, the land inside the wall is calm, dotted with the faint glimmer of distant villages. Beyond it, the northern wilderness sprawls in shadow, vast and unbroken. It's easy to believe the wall is a line between worlds, one known, one unknown. You stand there for a long time, listening. The wind brushes against your face, the cold biting now, but you don't move. The night has wrapped itself around you, and the wall feels less like a monument and more like an invitation. An invitation to keep going, to see what lies further along its spine. And so you do. Step by step you move forward, your breath rising in pale clouds, your shadow stretching long in the moonlight. Somewhere ahead, the wall curves into darkness. Somewhere ahead, the answers, if they exist, are waiting. And tonight, you're ready to follow. The wall leads you onward like a path through a dream. It rises and falls with the land, winding along the crests of hills that roll away into the distance. Every so often you pass another tower, its windows empty and watching, its stones cold beneath the sweep of moonlight. The night has claimed. The world now, no more colours, only shades of silver and shadow. Your footsteps sound louder here, echoing softly against the stone, and you find yourself slowing, almost reluctant to break the stillness. From this higher ridge, you can see far across the surrounding land. To one side lies the northern expanse, an ocean of blackness, where mountains melt into valleys and disappear into the horizon. To the other side, within the wall, you can make out the faint shapes of fields, streams glinting in the moonlight, and here and there the glow of fires burning in distant hearths. The wall, like a great seam, stitches these two worlds together, but it doesn't just separate them. It feels as if it seals them, keeping them apart for reasons you're only beginning to guess. The air is thin up here. It smells of frost and stone, sharp and clean, with the faintest trace of smoke carried from some unseen village. You breathe deeply, letting it fill you, and your thoughts drift to the people who built this. The sheer scale of it overwhelms the mind. Thousands upon thousands of hands, lifting stone after stone, year after year, generation after generation. The work itself must have been exhausting, but what must it have felt like to see the wall stretch farther and farther, knowing your own life would end before the work was finished? History tells us this was a project of defense, a shield against invading armies from the steppes. And yes, perhaps that's true. Perhaps armies did threaten these lands. But standing here, looking at the wall not just as a barrier, but as a boundary drawn with near-obsessive precision, you can't help but feel the official story is only a surface layer, a story for the people to believe, a story simple enough to remember, yet useful enough to hide something else beneath. The moon hangs higher now, and its light reveals details you missed earlier. In some places, the wall stones are older than in others, not just weathered, but different in texture and shape, as though they were taken from structures that predate the wall itself. You pause at a section where the lower layers are massive blocks, far larger than a human could reasonably carry. These blocks are darker, smoother, and fitted so perfectly together that not even the thinnest blade could slip between them. Above them, the newer stones are smaller, rougher, clearly added later. This kind of construction, you've seen it in photographs of other ancient sites, the megaliths of South America, the great walls of old temples in the Mediterranean, civilization separated by oceans and thousands of years, yet building in strangely similar ways. You kneel and run your hand along the seam between the old and the new. The older stone is colder, as if it's holding a deeper chill than the air around it. You think of the builders who came upon these stones long ago. Did they wonder, as you do, who placed them there first? Did they sense they were adding to something older, something whose true purpose they didn't fully understand? A sound catches your ear, faint, from the north. You straighten and listen. At first it's nothing, only the wind. Then there is again, low, resonant, almost like the rumble of distant thunder. But the sky is clear, the stars sharp and cold. The sound fades, then returns, this time a little longer, before dissolving into the night. You find yourself turning toward the dark expanse beyond the wall. Your eyes search the blackness, but it reveals nothing. The sound is gone now, replaced once more by the whisper of wind between stones. You walk on. The wall curves ahead, dipping into a shallow valley before climbing again. Down in the valley, the path is narrower, and the wall itself seems to hunch lower, as if the builders were drawing it tighter here, like the cinched waist of a belt. There's a feeling of compression, of focus, as though this section is important in ways you can't yet see. At the base of the next rise, you come upon something unusual, a gate not as large as the one you saw earlier, but made entirely of stone, sealed shut with mortar so old it's cracked like dry riverbeds. Carved into the lintel above the gate is a symbol. You don't recognize it, but it draws your eye immediately. A circle broken by 3 lines, radiating outward like the points of a compass. The carving is shallow but precise, as if the mason's hand had been steady and purposeful. You trace it with your fingertips. The stone here is smoother than the rest, almost polished. There's no plaque, no sign, nothing to explain what it means. Perhaps it's the mark of a particular dynasty, or the emblem of a lost clan. But something in your gut says otherwise. Symbols like this have a way of surviving far beyond the cultures that first carved them. They are adopted, reused, their meaning shifting but never disappearing entirely. The air by the gate is colder. You can see your breath now, curling in front of you like pale smoke. You step back, glancing up at the moon. Somewhere high above, a night bird crosses its face, a fleeting shadow that's gone as quickly as it appeared. The path climbs steeply here, and your legs begin to ache. But with each step the view expands, the world unfolding below you like an ancient map. You imagine the wall as a line drawn across that map by some unseen hand, not to claim land, but to mark a warning. A "do not cross" written in stone. At the crest you pause, leaning against the cold parapet. The night air presses against your skin, but you hardly notice. From here you can see both sides of the wall more clearly than ever before. Inside its bounds the land is calm, ordered, almost domesticated. Beyond it, a wilderness without end. Dark valleys, jagged peaks, stretches of nothingness where the moonlight barely reaches. And in that emptiness, you feel the echo of that low rumble you heard earlier, as though the land itself is holding its breath. You think again of that question, the one that began this journey. What if the wall wasn't built to repel invaders, but to contain something? The more you walk, the less it feels like fantasy. The wall is too deliberate, too relentless in its course. Even here, far from the crowded sections visited by tourists, it stands firm, as if it must not be allowed to fail. You take one last look at the horizon before continuing. Ahead, the wall dips again, vanishing into another stretch of shadowed hills. Somewhere in that darkness, there may be answers, or maybe just more questions. Either way, you feel yourself being drawn forward. And so you walk, the stones cool beneath your feet, the night vast around you, the mystery deepening with every step. The moon rides high now, casting a pale road of light along the spine of the Great Wall. You follow it deeper into the hills, where the land folds in on itself, creating pockets of silence so deep that even the wind seems reluctant to enter. Here, the wall feels heavier, not in weight, but in presence, as if the stones themselves carry the memory of what they were built to endure. From the distance, this stretch looks like any other. grey stone rising against the dark, crenellations jagged against the sky. But up close, you see the differences. The mortar is thicker here, layered unevenly, as if it had been reapplied many times over the centuries. Some of the bricks are stamped with symbols, small, faint, almost erased by weather. They are not Chinese characters, at least not ones you recognize. They are marks of another kind, triangles, spirals, and circles intersecting like diagrams of some forgotten science. You stop at one of these stones, kneeling to run your fingers across its face. The carving is shallow, precise, and though the stone is rough, the groove is smooth as if countless years have polished it. You try to imagine the hands that made it. Did they work by torchlight? Did they glance over their shoulders as they carved, afraid of being seen? A cool breeze snakes through the wall's openings, carrying with it a faint scent of earth and something metallic, like old iron. You lean against the parapet looking out toward the north. The land there is endless and still, a black ocean under the night sky. Somewhere far away, perhaps hundreds of miles from here, nomads once roamed, their herds moving with the seasons. That's the story told in history books, the threat the wall was meant to guard against. And yet, as your eyes trace its line into the distance, you can't help but think, armies would have simply gone around. They could have moved through the deserts, the forests, the mountain passes beyond sight. No wall can be everywhere at once. So why then this relentless determination to extend it across impossible landscapes? Why the obsession to seal every ridge, every pass, even places no enemy could feasibly cross? The question turns in your mind as you walk. The stones are uneven here, the slopes steep. You keep your balance by brushing a hand along the parapet, feeling its chill seep into your skin. Above, the stars shine sharper than you've ever seen, glittering like ice. The air is so clear you can see the faint band of the Milky Way, a pale river flowing silently across the heavens. As you round a bend, a tower comes into view, larger than the others you've seen tonight, squarer, its base wide and fortified. The entrance is blocked by a heavy wooden door reinforced with blackened metal. The wood is ancient, scarred with deep gouges and burn marks. The smell of char lingers faintly, as if some fire long ago had licked at its surface. You approach slowly. The door is sealed, but a narrow gap between the planks allows a thread of cold air to seep through. You place your palm over the gap and feel it steady, rhythmic, like the faint pulse of a living thing. Your mind tells you it's only the wind moving through the hollow interior, but the sensation stays with you, even when you pull your hand away. You walk around the tower, your boots crunching on loose gravel. On the far side, where the wall meets the tower's base, you notice a series of metal rings fixed into the stone. Chains once hung here. You can see the marks where the links wore grooves into the surface. They are old, rusted through, long broken. You picture them taut and heavy, binding something, or someone. You move on, the tower fading into the distance behind you. The night feels different now, heavier, as if the darkness has grown thicker. The wall dips into another valley, and for a moment you're enclosed by its high sides, the stone rising on both flanks like the walls of a corridor. Your footsteps echo faintly here, magnified by the narrow space. Halfway through, you pause. There is a sound, a faint tapping, irregular, as though coming from far within the wall itself. Tap, tap, tap. You wait, holding your breath, but it doesn't repeat. The silence closes in again. When you emerge from the valley, you find yourself looking down over a vast plain. In the moonlight, the wall cuts across it like a blade, unbroken, unwavering. The sheer scale of it steals your breath. It's not just a line of defense, it's a statement. A proclamation that whatever lies beyond must be kept at bay at any cost. You lean against the parapet, gazing into the dark expanse, and imagine what the builders might have feared. Not just an enemy army, something more persistent, something that could come again and again over centuries, something that required a structure that could outlast empires. History gives us neat answers because neat answers are easier to carry. But here, in the shadow of the wall, the neatness falls away. You feel the raw enormity of the thing, and the question presses closer. What exactly was so dangerous that it required a fortress stretching across the spine of a continent? A gust of wind cuts through your coat and you pull it tighter. The cold is deeper now, carrying with it that metallic tang once more. It lingers on. Your tongue, a faint taste you can't quite place. You glance at the wall surface in the moonlight and notice a shimmer at wetness, but a sheen in the stone itself, as if certain sections hold a different quality, a different mineral, perhaps chosen deliberately. Chosen or forged. The thought unsettles you, but you keep walking. The wall has a way of drawing you onward, its line pulling you deeper into its mystery. Ahead, the land rises again, and somewhere beyond that ridge, the next tower waits, silent, watching, perhaps holding more of the truth you've come here to find. And though the night is vast and the road long, you feel a strange certainty. You are walking not just through history, but along the edge of a secret too large to vanish, too dangerous to speak aloud. The Great Wall holds it still, and tonight it holds you too. The ridge ahead is steeper than the others you've crossed tonight. Each step upward feels deliberate, the cold air burning a little in your lungs as you climb. The moonlight gleams off the stones like frost, and your breath spills into the night in slow, pale clouds. The wall is narrower here, just wide enough for a single traveller, and it clings to the mountain like a spine of bone. One misplaced step and you could tumble into the darkness on either side. Halfway up you stop to rest, your hand braced on the rough parapet. You look down and see nothing but shadow. The world beyond the edge is gone erased by the depth of night. Ahead, the wall curves out of sight, but you can see the outline of a tower against the stars. It's squat and low, not like the tall sentinels you've passed before. Its roof has caved in, and parts of its walls are missing, leaving jagged gaps like broken teeth. You keep climbing until you reach it. The floor is uneven, a mixture of cracked stone and dirt. The air inside is colder than outside, unnervingly still. Moonlight pours through the broken roof, illuminating one of the walls where strange markings are etched into the stone. At first you think they might be graffiti from some long-past traveller, but the lines are too deliberate, too precise. You step closer. The carvings depict a repeating pattern, an arc enclosing a cluster of jagged shapes. Around the arc are small lines that could be spears or rays of light. Beneath it, a series of short, slanted marks, some kind of notation, a language perhaps, but one you don't recognize. The stone feels smooth beneath your fingertips, worn down over time but still distinct. Whoever made these marks wanted them to last. You imagine the mason's hand, chisel biting into the rock, working in silence. Was it a warning to those who had passed through here, or a record for the future when the truth might be forgotten You step back and take in the rest of the tower. The opposite wall has collapsed outward, the rubble spilling down the slope. Beyond it, the wall continues along the ridge. But here you see something unusual. On the far side of the parapet, hidden from a casual glance, is a second, smaller wall running parallel to the main one. It hugs the terrain tightly, almost buried in the earth, its top barely visible. You leave the tower and make your way toward it. The smaller wall is different. Its stones are darker, smoother, fitted together so tightly you can't slip a blade between them. In places, they're scorched. The surface rippled as though the stone had been subjected to heat, intense enough to melt it. You've seen nothing like it before on the wall. This structure runs only a short distance before disappearing into the mountainside, as if the earth itself swallowed it. You crouch beside it, brushing away dirt and frost from its surface. The same unfamiliar symbols you saw in the tower are carved here too, but deeper, more deliberate. They catch the moonlight faintly, as if the stone itself holds a memory of fire. You stand there for a while, the cold seeping through your gloves. Something about this hidden wall feels older than everything around it, older than the Great Wall itself. You imagine it uncovered by accident when this section of the main wall was being built, and the builders simply incorporated it into their design, like a bone exposed in the earth that could not be moved. The wind rises suddenly, rushing through the gap in the broken tower. It carries with it a sound, low, rolling, like a whisper stretched over stone. You turn toward it instinctively, scanning the darkness. The sound fades, replaced by silence, but the hair along your arms remains standing. You move on, leaving the smaller wall behind. The path curves downward now, hugging the mountainside before leveling out. You pass another short stretch of scorched stone, and you can't help but think of the symbols again, how they repeated, how they seem to form a kind of boundary in themselves. A thought comes to you unbidden. What if the wall's path was dictated not by geography, but by something buried beneath it? What if every curve, every rise and fall was chosen to enclose certain places, or to avoid disturbing them? The further you walk, the more the idea takes root. The wall might be a defense in name, but here in the quiet, away from the stories you've been told, it feels more like the lid of an ancient chest, one you're not meant to open. Ahead, the terrain changes again. The mountains give way to a stretch of rocky plain, and the wall runs straight across it, unwavering, as if in a hurry to reach the next rise. You can see another tower in the distance, taller than the last, its silhouette sharp against the horizon. When you reach it, you find the doorless entrance yawning wide. Inside, the air is colder still, and the walls are bare except for one. Here, etched deep into the stone, is a map. It's crude, the lines uneven, but you can make out the winding shape of the wall itself. Certain points along it are marked with small circles, each accompanied by a single carved symbol. You recognize one of them. It's the same broken circle you saw above the sealed gate earlier tonight. You trace the wall's route on the map with your fingertips. These circles are spaced irregularly, sometimes far apart, sometimes clustered together. They could mark fortifications or storage sites, or perhaps something entirely different. You wonder who drew this. Was it meant for others to find, or for the carver alone to remember? The wind howls briefly through the tower, and for an instant you think you hear something beneath it, a deep, almost imperceptible rumble. You step outside quickly, scanning the horizon. Nothing moves. The world is still, And yet, the wall feels more alive now than ever, not in the way a living creature moves, but in the way a dormant thing breathes slowly in its sleep. You glance back at the tower, at the map on its wall. The marks seem to beckon, inviting you to keep going, to follow the wall's spine deeper into the places it guards. You tighten your coat and start forward again. The cold bites at your cheeks, but you hardly notice. Somewhere ahead, beyond the next ridge, the next symbol waits. Somewhere ahead, the wall's oldest secrets lie in the silence, waiting to be found, or perhaps hoping never to be disturbed. The path ahead dips into a shallow basin where the wall seems to sag, its once proud battlements now little more than jagged teeth against the sky. Here the stones are darker, heavier, as though the mountain itself had been quarried and set into place without shaping. They jut at odd angles, some leaning inward toward the walkway, others pressing outward as though something beneath the wall has pushed against them over time. The basin is strangely quiet. Even the wind seems hesitant to pass through. Your footsteps sound muffled, swallowed almost immediately by the thick air. As you walk, you notice fine cracks along the walkway, hairline fractures running in long branching patterns. At first, they look like the natural wear of centuries, but the more you study them, the more they seem to follow an unnatural symmetry. Like veins, like something deep within the stone is spreading outward. To your right, the land slopes down toward the dark interior of the wall's domain fields gone fallow, small groves of twisted trees, and beyond that, the faint gleam of frozen rivers under the moonlight. To your left, the northern expanse stretches away into a vast nothingness, the horizon swallowed by shadow. You can feel the difference between these two worlds not just with your eyes, but somewhere in your bones. Inside the wall, the land is still. Beyond it, there's a kind of restlessness in the dark, as if the earth itself stirs in uneasy sleep. You keep walking until the basin narrows into a low pass, where the wall constricts to barely the width of two people. On either side, the stone drops sharply into darkness. A single watchtower rises ahead, built low into the ground so that its roof is level with the walkway. It's not grand like the others. It feels hidden, almost secret, as though it wasn't meant to be seen from a distance. The entrance is a narrow slit, just wide enough for you to turn sideways and slip through. Inside, the air changes immediately. It's colder, damper, carrying the faint scent of something mineral and old. The interior is small, barely a single room, but the walls here are unlike any you've seen before. They're not made of rough-cut blocks, but of massive, seamless slabs, their surfaces polished smooth. In the dim light, you can see faint etchings, lines, and circles interwoven in a pattern too complex to follow at a glance. You run your fingers over the carvings and feel a subtle vibration, as if the stone is humming at the edge of perception. The hum isn't constant. It pulses faintly in slow intervals like a distant heartbeat. You hold your breath and press your palm flat against the wall. The vibration travels up your arm, into your chest, and for a moment you feel, not fear exactly, but a deep unease, as though you're touching something that isn't entirely asleep. You step back quickly, your breath clouding the air. The sensation fades, but the memory of it lingers in your skin. You glance around the small chamber and notice that in the very center of the floor, there's a circular patch where the stone is different, darker, slightly recessed, as if it were a lid. Around its edge, small marks are chiseled into the surface, triangles pointing inward, their tips meeting the circle like teeth. You crouch beside it. The lid, or whatever it is, feels colder than the rest of the floor. You knock on it lightly, and the sound is not the dull thud of solid stone, but a faint hollow echo. There is space beneath. You stay there for a while, staring at it, wondering what might lie below. A chamber, a tunnel, or something that shouldn't be disturbed. The marks around the edge feel less decorative now, and more like a warning. Leaving the small tower, you step back into the night air, the cold biting sharper after the damp chill inside. You continue along the wall, the path slowly widening into open ground. Ahead, the terrain shifts dramatically. The wall begins to climb a jagged ridge, its stones locked into the mountain like the scales of some great sleeping creature. As you ascend, the air grows thinner, and the stars seem closer, sharper. From here you can see both directions along the wall for miles, its curves and angles etched in silver by the moonlight. You realize that this vantage point would have been ideal for spotting enemies in the distance. And yet much of the wall here faces inward toward China. The battlements are taller on the interior side, as though defending against something that might rise from within. Halfway up the ridge you pass another anomaly, a section of the wall that seems to have been melted. The stone bulges outward, smooth and glassy, its surface warped into frozen waves. You place your hand against it. It's strangely warm compared to the surrounding air. You can feel the uneven texture under your fingertips, as though the rock had once been liquid and cooled in place. The sight makes your mind wander to the old stories you've heard in passing, myths of fire from the sky, of beasts sealed behind walls, of weapons too dangerous to be remembered. Perhaps you think the wall is more than just a prison. Perhaps it's also a scar, left behind by something the builders fought and survived. At the crest of the ridge, you find another tower, this one intact. Its doorway is sealed not by wood or stone, but by a heavy slab of metal, blackened and pitted. The hinges are fused with rust, and the edges are sealed with thick lines of solder. Whoever closed this door didn't intend for it to be opened again. You stand before it, listening. At first as nothing. Then, just as you're about to turn away, you hear it. A faint, low vibration, different from the one in the smaller tower, but steady, almost mechanical. The sound is so soft you could mistake it for your own heartbeat, but once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. You back away, your boots crunching on frost. The night feels even larger now, the stars heavier above, the walls stretching away in both directions like an unbroken sentence written across the earth. Whatever it was built to keep out or in it has been here far longer than you've been alive, longer than any empire, longer, perhaps, than history itself. You take one last look at the sealed metal door before turning away. The road ahead is long, and the next section of the wall is already slipping into shadow. Somewhere beyond that darkness, you know. There are more of these anomalies, more clues scattered like stones in a vast unsolved puzzle. And so you keep walking, the night pressing close, the wall guiding you deeper into this mystery it has guarded for centuries. The ridge you've just crossed fades behind you, its silhouette dissolving into the distance. Ahead, the wall begins to snake through a series of deep valleys where the moonlight can barely reach, leaving long corridors of shadow. The air is heavier here, holding the scent of damp earth and something faintly resinous, like old pine sap clinging to the stones. Each step you take sends a small puff of frost into the air, and the sound of your boots against the weathered stone feels louder in the stillness. As you move into the first valley, the wall's towers seem to change character. These are older, their stones more irregular, the mortar between them crumbling like dried clay. But there's something else, signs of repair. Patchwork that doesn't match the original construction. You notice bricks of a different colour and texture, set into place almost like bandages. In some places, whole sections have been replaced with slabs that are smoother and darker than the rest, their surfaces still bearing faint marks of carving. It's here, in the cold hollow between the hills, that the whispers of old stories begin to stir in your mind. You've heard fragments before, from old books, from chance conversations in tea houses, from travellers with more curiosity than caution. Stories about how the wall wasn't only a line of defence, but a line of silence, a place people were warned not to linger after dark. There's one tale in particular that comes back to you now, about a village that once stood just beyond the wall, deep in the wilderness to the north. The story says the villagers were quiet folk, known for their skill in working with iron and stone. One winter, strange shapes began appearing in the snow, massive clawed footprints that led from the mountains down toward their fields. The footprints never crossed the wall. The villagers would stand on its parapets at night and watch, torches in hand, as the shapes moved in the darkness beyond. Then, one night, the shapes stopped. No more footprints appeared. The next day, the villagers were gone. Every one of them. Their tools and belongings left behind, meals half-eaten, fires still burning low in their hearths. You've heard other versions. Some say the villagers were taken, others that they fled in the night, trying to outrun something that had already found a way past the wall. But the ending is always the same. When others came to search, they found no bodies, no tracks, no signs of struggle, only silence. Your steps slow as you remember these words, and you glance toward the northern darkness. The land beyond the wall is utterly still. Yet even in that stillness, you can feel an echo of the old fear those villagers must have felt, the weight of something out there, patient and unseen. The wall rises higher here, as if the builders wanted to strengthen this stretch above all others. The battlements are thick, the walkway narrow, and the towers stand close together like a row of sentries. Inside one of these towers you find a fire pit in the centre of the floor, its stones blackened with soot so old it has sunk deep into the pores. Above the pit, the ceiling is pierced by a small vent, barely wide enough to let smoke escape. On the wall beside the fire pit, someone carved a line of characters, faded, uneven. You crouch to read them, running your fingers lightly over the grooves. They're written in an old style, but you can still make them out. Do not answer when it calls your name. The words send a chill through you that has nothing to do with the cold air. You stand quickly, glancing at the doorway as though expecting to see someone there. But the tower is empty, the night outside untouched. You step back onto the wall and continue forward. The next valley is deeper, the shadows denser. Here, you find another sign of the old stories, a section where the inner face of the wall is covered with what looks like scorch marks, black streaks reaching upward as though something had pressed against it from below, burning as it climbed. The stone is cracked in places, and between the cracks, tiny flecks of something, metallic glint faintly in the moonlight. You touch one, and it's sharp, like the edge of a blade. Further along, the wall widens again, and you come upon a cluster of small watchtowers connected by short stretches of parapet. In the centre of this cluster is a courtyard, open to the sky, with a well at its heart. The well is sealed with a heavy slab of stone. Around the slab are 7 iron stakes driven deep into the ground, their tops bent into hooks as though something had once been chained there. The iron is ancient, pitted with rust, but still solid enough to hold. You walk around the slab slowly. There are markings along its edge circles, broken by lines repeating in a ring. The same symbol you've seen in other places along the wall. It feels deliberate, ritualistic, as though the placement of each mark was meant to hold something in place. The wind picks up suddenly, rushing over the courtyard with a low droning sound. For a moment you imagine you hear voices in it, distant, faint, calling in a language you don't know. You step back from the well, your heart beating faster, and the sound fades just as quickly as it came. You leave the courtyard behind, your footsteps quickening as you pass through the last of the valleys. The wall begins to climb again, and you welcome the change. The higher you go, the more the air feels open, the less the shadows press in. But the memory of what you've seen lingers. The burn marks, the chained slab, the warning carved into stone. Folklore often grows in the cracks between fact and fear. People create stories to explain what they cannot understand, to make sense of the strange and the terrible. Yet walking here, under the cold watch of the moon, you begin to wonder if the stories are not inventions at all, but the last fragments of something older, a truth passed down in whispers until its meaning was almost lost. And perhaps, just perhaps, the wall is not only the stage for those stories, but the reason they exist at all. You keep moving, your breath steady, your eyes on the path ahead. The wall leads you upward toward another high ridge, where you can already see the outline of a great tower waiting in the distance. Whatever lies within it may hold another piece of the mystery, a deeper echo of the past, a shadow of the thing this wall was built to keep at bay. The climb toward the great tower feels longer than you expect. The ridge rises slowly, as if stretching itself between two worlds, the quiet interior of the wall and the boundless dark beyond it. The wind here is stronger, carrying with it the dry chill of distant ice. You pull your coat tighter, but the cold seeps in anyway, a reminder that the wall does not care for comfort. As you near the tower, its scale becomes clearer. It is massive, its base wider than any you've seen so far, its height enough to cast a shadow even under the thin light of the moon. The parapets along its crown are jagged and uneven, but still formidable. From a distance, it resembles a crown of broken teeth. This is no ordinary watchtower. It feels more like a fortress within a fortress. The entrance is wide and arched, but blocked by a heavy wooden door reinforced with metal bands. The wood is blackened and splintered, and the iron is streaked with something that isn't just rust. It's darker, sticky in places where it hasn't fully dried. You hesitate before touching it. Whatever it is, it feels wrong, as though it doesn't belong to the weather or the earth. You press against the door, and to your surprise it shifts with a groan. The hinges scream in protest as you push harder, until a gap opens wide enough for you to slip inside. The air within is stagnant, heavy, and laced with a faint smell that reminds you of damp stone and extinguished fire. Inside, the space is vast. The ground floor is a circular chamber, its walls lined with alcoves. Some hold remnants of old storage broken crates, rotting rope, a scattering of rusted weapons. Others are empty, their shadows deep and unwelcoming. At the centre of the floor is a broad stone disc, similar to the one you saw sealing the well in the courtyard earlier. Around its edge, the familiar broken circle symbols are etched deeply, their grooves filled with a black substance that glistens faintly in the light, filtering from narrow slits high above. You circle the disc slowly, noting the absence of dust on its surface. The rest of the room is thick with it, yet here the stone is clean, almost polished. You kneel to touch it, and once again, you feel that subtle vibration, steady, pulsing, faint as a breath. The alcoves above you open onto a second level. A narrow stone staircase clings to the wall, winding upward in tight turns. You ascend carefully, the steps uneven and crumbling in places. At the top, you emerge into a wide gallery that circles the interior of the tower. From here you can see the entire chamber below, the stone disc like an eye staring up at you. The gallery has arrow slits looking both outward and inward. When you glance out toward the northern wilderness, the view is stark and empty. Rolling hills, black forests, and the glimmer of ice on distant peaks. When you turn inward toward China's heartland, the land seems softer, dotted with sleeping villages and faint threads of smoke. But something in the positioning of these slits troubles you. The ones facing outward are narrow, utilitarian. The ones facing inward are broader, angled downward, almost as if designed for watching. You move to the far side of the gallery where an archway leads into a smaller chamber. The air here is even colder, and the floor is littered with scraps of paper and fragments of what might have been scrolls. Most are too decayed to read, but one piece has survived enough to reveal a line of text. You lift it gently and hold it toward the faint moonlight streaming through a slit. The ink is faded, but the words are just legible. They must never leave this place. The phrasing makes you pause. It does not say, they must never enter. It says leave. The wall, then, is not only a barrier to intrusion, it is a prison. The wind howls through the arrow slits, low and mournful, as if in agreement. You return to the main gallery and follow it around until you find another staircase leading higher. The steps here are steeper, the air colder still. At the top, you emerge onto the tower's roof. The parapets are jagged, their stones worn and cracked, but the view is unlike anything you've seen before. The wall stretches away in both directions, lit silver by the moon, its length vanishing into the haze of distance. To the north, the land drops into a vast, yawning chasm. You walk to the edge and look down. The chasm is immense, its sides sheer, its depths filled with shifting shadows that resist the moonlight. You can't see the bottom. A faint, constant sound rises from it. Not wind, not water, but something deeper, like the distant roar of an ocean heard through stone. It takes you a moment to realize the wall does not cross this chasm in the usual way. Instead of a bridge, it ends in a massive barricade that plunges straight down into the abyss, anchoring itself to the unseen depths. You can only imagine how far it must go, how much stone and labour it took to seal whatever lies below. Standing there, you feel the enormity of it, the intention, the fear, the unyielding determination of those who built this. And suddenly, the comparisons you've read about in old histories come back to you. You think of Hadrian's Wall, built by Rome to hold back the northern tribes, but never with such obsession. You think of the mythical gates of Alexander, said to seal monstrous nations away from the rest of the world. The parallels are too many to ignore. Across the globe, across cultures and centuries, there are always walls, and sometimes they are not built to keep us safe from the outside, but to keep us safe from what we've already trapped within. The cold bites deep now, and you step back from the edge. Your eyes drift once more to the northern wilderness. It is silent, still, and yet you can't shake the sense that it's listening, that something far below or far beyond is aware of you. You descend the tower slowly, the echoes of your footsteps following you down. When you reach the ground floor again, you pause beside the central stone disc. You do not touch it this time. Instead, you glance at the sealed door and realize how much this place depends on things staying closed. Stepping back out into the night, the air feels heavier than before. The wall stretches onward, its stones glimmering faintly in the moonlight, and somewhere in the distance, beyond the next bend, the next secret waits, and still you walk forward. The wall narrows again as you leave the tower behind, its path slipping along the edge of a cliff where the land drops steeply into darkness. The stones here feel older, the mortar between them crumbling in places, yet the structure holds firm, unyielding, despite centuries of storms and winters. The moon has shifted higher, casting long shadows across the walkway, and the air hums faintly with that quiet, constant pressure you've begun to notice in certain stretches. Your boots crunch softly on the frost. Ahead, the wall bends in a wide arc around the cliffside before disappearing into a low saddle between two ridges. As you approach, you realize this curve is deliberate. It does not follow the easiest path, but instead makes a long detour, as though circling something best avoided. You stop for a moment and lean against the parapet, looking down toward the land enclosed by the wall. Far below, the terrain flattens into a dry, barren plain. There are no villages here, no fields, no trees, just the pale shimmer of stone and dust. In the moonlight, the surface appears uneven, ridged and pitted, almost like the cracked floor of a drained lake. And then you notice something stranger, a perfect circle, enormous in scale, faintly visible in the dust. The wall's curve is not random, it is hugging the outer edge of this circle exactly. You follow the curve until the wall levels out again. The circle on the plain remains in view for a while before vanishing behind a slope, but the thought of it lingers. A natural feature, perhaps, or something left behind by the builders, something they chose not to cross. The path ahead widens suddenly into a broad platform, a kind of outpost where the wall bulges outward toward the northern expanse. In the center of the platform stands a low stone structure, no taller than your waist. It is square, with each side engraved with a pattern of repeating lines and symbols. You recognize the broken circle motif again, chafed deep into the stone and surrounded by 3 jagged marks. On the top surface, there's depression filled with a dark, glassy substance that catches the moonlight like frozen water. You kneel to look closer. The surface is perfectly smooth, unbroken, but faint ripples seem to shimmer just beneath, as if something has been trapped inside for a very long time. Your reflection stares back at you, pale in the black surface. For a moment you think you see movement, just a flicker, like a shadow passing beneath ice. But when you blink, it's gone. You stand slowly, the hairs on your arms lifting. The air feels charged here, as though the wall is drawing energy from this place or feeding it. Continuing onward, you notice the towers are now farther apart, as if this section of the wall was built to be patrolled quickly. The walkway is smoother here too, the stones cut with more precision, the gaps between them almost invisible. It's as though the builders knew they could not afford weakness along this stretch. Your thoughts wander to the official explanations, how historians describe the wall as a military fortification, a project of defense and imperial control. And yet, the further you walk, the more the patterns emerge. The hidden walls, the sealed gates, the discs in the ground, the repeating symbols. You think of the similarities to other ancient sites around the world, places that also seem to be more than they appear. In South America, there are walls built of massive stones fitted so tightly that even a knife cannot slip between them. In the Middle East, there are ruins aligned perfectly with the stars, built in ways that defy the tools of their supposed era. And in old legends from the Caucasus, there are stories of barriers against the darkness, structures raised not for war between men, but to guard against something older, something that did not belong to this world. Could the Great Wall belong to that same lineage? Could there have been a time, long before the Qin and Ming dynasties, when a different people, armed with a different purpose, began building these boundaries? And if so, what happened to them? The wall rises sharply again, climbing the flank of another ridge. As you ascend, you hear the wind change, no longer a constant whisper, but a series of long, low gusts like breath drawn in and slowly released. You pause, realizing the sound is not entirely natural. It is too steady, too deliberate, almost patterned. At the top you find another tower, smaller than the fortress you left behind, but still formidable. The door is long gone, and inside you find the remnants of a wooden platform that must once have supported a second floor. The lower walls are covered in more carving spirals, intersecting lines, and a strange shape that looks like an eye. Its pupil formed from the same broken circle you've seen elsewhere. Beneath the eye is a short inscription in faded characters. When it wakes, the wall will not be enough. You stand there, letting the words sink in. They are not boastful, not meant to inspire confidence. They are an admission. Whoever wrote them understood that this barrier, for all its scale and strength, might one day fail. You leave the tower and walk on, the cold settling deeper into your bones. The night has grown quieter again. The strange gusting breath faded back into the steady sigh of wind over stone. Yet your mind keeps returning to that circle on the plain, to the idea that the wall's shape was dictated not by the land but by something else, something beneath it perhaps, or something so vast it can still be seen from above. Your eyes trace the next stretch of wall, imagining it not as a boundary between nations but as part of a network lines drawn across the earth in patterns we have forgotten how to read. And somewhere within those patterns lies the reason the Great Wall exists at all. You keep moving, each step bringing you closer to the next bend, the next tower, the next unanswered question. The mystery does not shrink as you walk, it grows, stretching out ahead of you like the wall itself, endless under the watch of the cold and silent moon. The moon is beginning its slow descent now, dipping toward the western horizon, and its light grows softer, more diffuse. Shadows lengthen across the stones, pooling in the cracks and low places, making the wall seem older, more worn, as if centuries have passed in just the last few hours. You keep walking, but the silence here is heavier, denser. It presses in on you like the weight of the stones themselves. This stretch of the wall runs straight and unbroken for what feels like miles, flanked on one side by a steep slope leading down to barren ground. and on the other by jagged cliffs that rise high enough to block much of the wind. The air is still here, too still. Even your footsteps seem reluctant to echo, as though the wall itself is listening. You pass a section where the battlements are lower, the stone worn smooth from more than just weather. The surface bears faint scratches, as though something sharp has brushed repeatedly against it over time. At first glance they seem random, but as you walk, you notice the scratches line up perfectly from one block to the next, running in a long, continuous streak that disappears into the distance. You stop, crouching to examine them more closely. The grooves are narrow but deep, and they cut straight into the stone, unsoftened by age. Whatever made these marks didn't just graze the surface, it bit into it. And the depth is too uniform to be the work of crude tools. Standing again, you continue forward, the wall carrying you toward another tower in the distance. This one is small and square, more like a sentry post than a fortification. Its doorway hangs open, the frame splintered where hinges once were. Inside, the walls are bare except for a single strip of parchment pinned high in one corner. The edges are brittle, crumbling to the touch, but you can still see the faded ink, a series of short vertical strokes, evenly spaced. You don't recognize the script, but something about its repetition feels methodical, like a record of something counted or tracked. Perhaps patrols? Or perhaps incidents. As you turn to leave, your eyes catch on a thin seam in the floor near the wall. Kneeling, you brush away dirt and debris to reveal a small iron ring set into the stone. You hesitate for a long moment before tugging it. The ring resists at first, then gives way with a creak that echoes far too loudly in the quiet. A narrow hatch swings open, revealing a black shaft beneath. The air rising from it is damp and cold, carrying the faint smell of earth and something older like the breath of a cave that hasn't been opened in centuries. You lower yourself carefully, your boots finding uneven steps carved directly into the stone. The descent is short, but the space below is unlike anything above. It's not part of the wall's regular structure, no mortar, no uniform bricks. The chamber is roughly circular, its walls lined with shelves carved into the rock itself. Most of the shelves are empty, but a few hold small clay jars sealed with wax. Their surfaces are unmarked, and they feel surprisingly heavy for their size. At the center of the floor lies another disc, but this one is different. It is smaller, set into the ground so that its surface is perfectly flush with the surrounding stone. There are no broken circle symbols here, only a single spiral that begins at the edge and winds inward until it disappears into a small hole at the center. You crouch and place your hand over it. The stone is cold, so cold it almost burns, and you pull back instinctively. When you look again, you think you see a faint shimmer in the spiral's grooves, like frost catching the light. You stand quickly, your skin prickling. Whatever this place is, it feels hidden for a reason, perhaps even from those who walk the wall above. Climbing back to the surface, you step out into the night air and close the hatch, pressing it firmly until it sits flush again. The wall looks the same as it did before, its stones pale in the moonlight, but you can't shake the feeling that what lies beneath is more important than what stands above. You resume walking, the horizon ahead faintly lit by the first hints of approaching dawn. But the quiet still presses in, and your mind turns to another question. One you hadn't let yourself consider until now. What if some of the truth about the wall has been kept hidden not just from the world, but from the people who built it? It wouldn't be the first time in history. You've read of expeditions buried in the archives, of reports altered or destroyed, of scholars dismissed or discredited for asking the wrong questions. Power has always had a way of controlling the narrative, of deciding which truths are safe to share. And here, walking this ancient line through mountains and plains, you can almost feel the weight of that suppression. It's in the sealed gates. It's in the symbols no one explains. It's in the way the wall curves around certain places instead of crossing them. The thought makes you glance over your shoulder. The path behind you is empty, but the shadows seem deeper now, the air heavier. The wall stretches back into the darkness, and for a moment you wonder if anyone is following you. Not a person, but something older, slower, patient. Ahead, the next tower rises into view, its shape sharp against the lightning sky. You quicken your pace, eager for the vantage point it will offer. When you finally reach it, you step inside and find the interior stripped bare. No maps, no carvings, no fire pits, only dust and silence. But as you climb the narrow steps to the roof, the view opens before you. The wall winding away into the distance, its spine vanishing into pale morning haze. Beyond it, the wilderness lies empty and endless. And yet, you can't help feeling it is not truly empty at all. You stand there for a long time, watching as the first edge of the sun peeks over the horizon, washing the stones in gold. In the daylight, the wall will look ordinary again. Tourists will walk its more accessible stretches. Guides will tell stories about emperors and generals, and the mystery will be buried beneath the comfort of familiar history. But you will know better. You take a deep breath and step down from the tower, ready to follow the wall further. The day is coming, but your journey is far from over. Somewhere ahead, there are still places where the old truth seeps through the cracks and you intend to find them. The sun climbs higher, but here along the wall the morning light feels thin, filtered through a haze that lingers over the mountains. The frost under your boots has begun to soften, releasing the faint scent of damp earth and stone. With daylight comes a different kind of quiet. Not the watchful, suffocating stillness of the night, but a vast and echoing calm as if the land is holding its breath. You follow the wall as it threads through rolling hills. The path is broad and steady here, the stones laid with precision, but you notice that the towers are fewer and farther apart. Between them, the wall dips into long stretches of open walkway where the battlements are lower, giving you an unbroken view of both sides. Inside the wall, the terrain is rugged but dotted with patches of grass and low shrubs. Beyond it to the north, the ground is harsher, more rock than soil, the colours muted to a pale grey under the sun. After several miles, you come to a stretch where the wall has collapsed in places. These stones lie scattered down the slopes, some cracked open to reveal smooth, dark cores unlike the rough surfaces exposed to the air. You pause here, kneeling to touch one. The inner stone is cool, almost metallic, and etched with faint lines that seem too precise to be natural. They run in parallel, disappearing into the fracture as if they are part of a larger pattern hidden within the block. Just beyond this ruined section, the wall turns sharply into a narrow pass. At the bend stands a small weathered tower, half buried in the earth. You almost pass it by, but something about the way the door hangs open, slightly crooked, as though force draws you in. Inside, the air is stale and carries the scent of something old, like parchment or dried leather. The floor is strewn with debris, broken beams, a rusted spearhead, fragments of pottery. Against the far wall leans a wooden crate, its lid split down the middle. You step closer, nudging it open with your boot, and inside you find a collection of bound journals. The leather covers are stiff with age, but the bindings are still strong. You lift one carefully and open it. The handwriting is neat but hurried, the ink faded to a deep brown. It isn't in a language you can fully read, but certain words are repeated often enough to stand out. Gate, north, sealed, again. Interspersed among the text are sketches, crude but clear of the wall, of circular markings like the ones you've seen etched into stone, and of strange shapes that are hard to identify. They are long, sinuous, with limbs that bend in ways that don't match any animal you know. At the back of the journal, you find a folded scrap of parchment that crumbles slightly at the edges as you unfold it. It's a map, hand-drawn, showing a section of the wall you haven't reached yet. Certain towers are marked with small symbols, while others are crossed out entirely. In the margin, in a different, more careful hand, is a note. Only the old ones remember. The phrase sticks with you. It could mean elders in distant villages, or it could mean something else entirely, something older than people. You place the journal back in the crate and step outside. The sun has climbed higher still, and from this point, you can see the wall continuing along the ridges, its spine rising and falling with the land. In the far distance, you spot what looks like a cluster of larger structures, too far to make out clearly, but distinct from the smaller towers you've seen so far. You set off toward them, following the wall through the pass. As you walk, the wind begins to pick up, whistling softly through gaps in the stone. The sound is constant but not unpleasant, until, in one narrow stretch, it changes. The whistle becomes a low, almost musical tone, resonating deep in the stones beneath your feet. You stop, pressing your palm against the wall, and feel a faint vibration, steady and rhythmic. It's not like the pulses you felt in the sealed discs before. It's slower, more drawn out, like the tolling of a bell muffled by earth. You move on, but the sound follows for a time before fading entirely. By the time you reach the larger structures you saw earlier, the day is beginning to wane. The wall here broadens into a fortified compound, with 4 towers standing at each corner of a large square courtyard. The walls are thicker, the gates reinforced with bands of iron that are newer than the rest of the structure. Inside the courtyard, the ground is uneven, patches of stonework alternating with areas of bare earth. In the centre lies another sealed opening, larger than any you've seen yet. It is octagonal, the stone smooth and polished, with the familiar broken circle symbols carved at each point of the shape. Between these points, lines are etched inward, converging at a small, perfectly round hole in the centre. The hole is no wider than your thumb, but it's deep, the shadows within swallowing the light completely. You kneel beside it, half expecting to feel the cold pulse of energy you've found in other places, but instead the stone is inert, almost warm from the day's sun. Still, something about it feels incomplete, like a mechanism waiting for a key. In one corner of the courtyard, you find a small door leading into the base of one of the towers. Inside is a narrow spiral staircase, and at the top, a viewing platform with slits facing in all directions. From here, the view is breathtaking, miles of wall stretching away in either direction, and beyond it, the endless sweep of mountains and plains. But what catches your attention most is a series of faint lines visible in the northern landscape. They run parallel to the wall for miles, disappearing and reappearing as the land rises and falls. You watch them for a long time, wondering if they are remnants of some older structure, or perhaps the faint scars of something once buried. As the light begins to fade, you descend and return to the wall. The journals you found in the ruined tower weigh heavily in your thoughts. The repeated mentions of sealed and again, the strange sketches, the cryptic note about the old ones. It all feels connected, but the pieces don't yet fit together. You push on into the deepening dusk, the stones cooling under your feet, the shadows lengthening until they blur the line between wall and land. Somewhere ahead, the night will bring its own truths that perhaps the day is not meant to show, and you are ready to meet them. By the time night settles fully again, the wall has carried you into higher ground, where the air is colder and sharper, the stars above so bright they seem almost close enough to touch. You've left the fortified compound behind, but its weight stays with you. The octagonal seal, the journal sketches, the strange lines in the northern land. Those details replay in your thoughts with every step, weaving themselves into the larger mystery that has been tightening around you since the first stretch of stone you walked. This section of the wall is quieter than any before. There are no villages within sight, no lantern glow in the valleys. The land inside the wall is nothing but empty slopes and rock, the grass brittle and sparse. Beyond to the north, the wilderness is more jagged now, marked with steep ravines and dense pockets of forest that look black under the moonlight. The emptiness here feels intentional, as if people have long avoided settling near this stretch for reasons never written down. The towers here are different too. They are squat, almost bunker-like, their arrow slits narrower and fewer. You pass the first without entering, but the second catches your attention immediately. Its stones are darker than the rest of the wall, and when you step inside, the air is noticeably colder, as if you've entered a space deep underground rather than a structure open to the sky. There is no fire pit here, no debris, no sign of human presence at all. Only a wide, flat slab set into the floor at the centre of the room. It is unlike the discs you've seen before. It's not circular but hexagonal, with a raised ridge along the edges. The centre bears no symbols, only a single deep groove running from one point of the hexagon to the opposite point. You kneel beside it, running your hand along the groove, and you feel something unusual. It's warmer than the surrounding stone. Faintly so, but enough for you to notice in this cold air. You press your palm flat against it, and for the briefest moment you think you feel a pulse. Not like a heartbeat this time, but like the echo of something deep and slow, far below your feet. The sensation fades as quickly as it came. You stand and step back, but the air in the room feels different now, thicker somehow, as if the space itself is holding its breath. Outside, the wall narrows again, hugging the edge of a cliff that drops into a deep gorge. The sound of running water rises from below, though the depth makes it impossible to see the river in the dark. The wall here is reinforced with an extra layer of stone on the northern side, and at intervals, thick iron rings are set into the base, each large enough for a person to pass a rope or chain through. The purpose isn't clear. They could be for securing equipment or something else. Halfway along the gorge, you come across a section where the wall stones are cracked and blackened, as if scorched by intense heat. The damage is concentrated in a single spot no wider than a wagon, and the stones here seem almost fused together. You touch one, and it feels slightly smoother than the rest, almost as if it had melted before hardening again. Further on, the wall crosses a narrow stone bridge over the gorge. The parapets here are low, offering a wide view of the landscape below. The moonlight catches on something metallic down there, long straight lines glinting faintly among the rocks. They're too regular to be natural, and too far down to examine from here. You stand for a while, staring, wondering if they are part of something ancient buried in the gorge itself. On the far side of the bridge, the wall widens into another platform. In the centre stands a tall, thin structure, not a tower, but a pillar of stone etched with symbols from top to bottom. You recognise some: the broken circle, the jagged lines, the small triangles pointing inward. But there are others you've never seen. Spirals nested within spirals, shapes that seem to fold over themselves, patterns that draw your eye inward the longer you look. At the base of the pillar, a small plaque has been set into the stone in more recent years. The characters are modern, and the message is short. Restricted area. No entry. But there's nothing here to keep you out. The plaque feels more like a formality than an actual warning, a marker for those who might pass without understanding the weight of what they see. You circle the pillar slowly, letting your fingers drift over the carvings. Some of the grooves are shallow, almost worn away, while others are deep and sharp, as though they've been cut recently. The mix of ages here is strange. It suggests that the pillar has been altered or added to many times over the centuries. Beyond the platform, the wall begins to climb again, rising toward a high ridge that cuts across the horizon. The climb is steep, and as you ascend, you notice the stones change again. They are larger here, darker, and the joins between them are impossibly precise. The mortar lines vanish entirely, and in places the stones fit so perfectly you can't see where one ends and another begins. At the top of the ridge, you pause to catch your breath and then freeze. Far ahead, barely visible in the moonlight, is a massive gate. It spans the entire width of the wall, its surface made of interlocking plates of dark metal. The structure rises higher than the battlements, its surface smooth except for a single vertical seam running down the centre. There are no hinges, no handles, no obvious means of opening it. You approach slowly, the cold growing sharper with every step. The gate radiates a faint hum, almost inaudible, but you can feel it in your teeth and bones. Standing before it, you place your hand against the metal, and the hum deepens slightly, as if acknowledging your presence. Up close, you see faint markings on the surface circles within circles, each bisected by lines that form unfamiliar angles. They are not carved into the metal, but seem to exist beneath it, shifting slightly when you move, like patterns seen through water. You take a step back, your breath catching in the cold air. This gate is not part of the wall's original construction. It feels older, stranger, as if it had been placed here to seal something away long before the wall itself was raised. The night is utterly still. No wind, no sound from the gorge below, only the low, steady hum of the gate. And standing there, you realize you've reached a threshold, not just in the journey, but in the story the wall has been telling you in pieces. Whatever lies beyond this point is not just history. It is the reason the wall exists at all, and now you must decide whether to keep walking. The gate towers before you, a monolith of dark metal and ancient intent, its presence pressing into the air like a weight. For a long moment, You simply stand there, hand still tingling from the faint hum it gave when you touched it. The wall has led you through valleys, over ridges, past towers and discs and symbols, but this is different. This feels like the heart of it all. The seam running down the middle of the gate is impossibly narrow, and the metal plates fit together with a precision that feels beyond the reach of the dynasties recorded in history. You scan the surface again, following the faint, shifting patterns beneath its circles within circles, intersecting lines at unnatural angles, a geometry that draws your eyes inward until you almost lose sense of the rest of the world. It feels deliberate, not decorative, but purposeful, as if the designs are a kind of language you can almost, but not quite, understand. You think of the journals you found earlier, of the repeated word sealed, of the warning, they must never leave this place. You think of the way the wall curves around strange circles on the land, how it avoids certain places entirely. And now here, standing before the gate, the shape of the story begins to emerge in your mind. Not a neat, finished picture, but the faint outline of something vast. You walk slowly along the length of the gate, searching for anything that might be a mechanism. Near the base, you find a narrow groove running parallel to the ground. Inside it are tiny notches, evenly spaced, each one shaped like a triangle pointing upward. They remind you of the marks carved around the sealed discs you've encountered. Kneeling, you run your fingers along them. The metal here is colder than the rest of the gate, cold enough to sting your skin. One of the notches has a faint discoloration darker, almost burnt. You press it lightly, and for a fraction of a second, the hum in the metal changes pitch. Then it returns to its steady vibration. You step back quickly, your pulse quickening. There is no sound from beyond the gate, no movement. But something about the air on this side feels charged now, as if the gate has shifted however slightly in its attention. You turn away from it and walk a short distance along the wall to collect yourself. From this vantage point, the view to the north is unlike anything you've seen before. The land falls away into a vast basin, its far edge lost in haze. Even in the moonlight, you can see strange lines and shapes etched into its surface, straight ridges, spirals, even what looks like a perfect hexagon miles across. None of them look like the work of nature. Your mind drifts to the idea of cycle civilizations rising and falling, each leaving traces behind for the next. Perhaps what the wall contains is not a single threat, but the remnant of something from long before, something that has outlasted more than one world. A sound pulls you from your thoughts. It is faint at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind, but it grows low and resonant like a deep breath drawn through stone. It doesn't come from the basin or the wilderness. It comes from the gate. You turn back toward it, every instinct telling you to retreat, yet your feet carry you closer. The hum you felt earlier is stronger now, vibrating in the air itself. The faint patterns beneath the metal shift more quickly, spiraling inward, then outward, then vanishing altogether before reappearing in new configurations. You stand there, heart beating fast, and for a moment you almost feel as if the gate is listening. Then, as suddenly as it began, the vibration fades. The patterns slow, then still. The air becomes heavy and silent again. You exhale slowly, realizing you'd been holding your breath. It is then you remember something from the map in the journal. The small symbols marking certain towers, the ones crossed out entirely, the ones left untouched. This gate was not marked at all. Either the map maker didn't know it existed, or they didn't dare mark it. A question rises in you like a tide. If the wall was meant to contain, what is it that lives behind this gate? And yet, another thought creeps in alongside it. What if nothing is left at all? What if the gate stands empty, and the true danger is not opening it, but forgetting what it was built to guard against? You find yourself caught between these two possibilities, the dread of something sleeping and the unease of something lost. Both carry their own kind of danger. As you stand there, the wind finally returns, slipping over the wall and through the narrow seam of the gate with a soft hiss. It sounds almost like words you cannot understand, a whisper carried from somewhere deep and unseen. You step back once more, the enormity of it pressing in. You know you cannot open it, not now, perhaps not ever, but you also know you cannot walk away unchanged. You turn and begin walking again, leaving the gate behind you. The wall stretches on ahead, and you can see another ridge rising in the distance. The night is deep, the stars cold and clear, but your mind is already far ahead, wondering what lies beyond that next bend, and the next, and the next. As you move, the wall feels different beneath your feet, not just stone and mortar, but the spine of something vast, something built across time itself. And you, for reasons you cannot explain, are meant to follow it. The air is colder here, the shadows deeper. Yet with each step you feel the story pulling you forward, as if the wall itself is leading you toward the final pieces of the truth. And somewhere, far behind you, the gate stands silent once more, but no longer entirely still. You walk for a long time after leaving the gate behind, the air sharper now, carrying the faint scent of stone dust and pine. The wall under your boots feels more solid than ever, but also more deliberate, as though every brick you step on was placed to lead you here, to this moment. The moon has drifted west, and the faintest glow of pre-dawn begins to brush the horizon to the east, staining the mountains with a cold silver light. The ridge ahead rises gradually, and with every step you gain a wider view of the world on both sides of the wall. To the south, the land inside is quiet and orderly rolling hills, bare fields resting for spring, the suggestion of villages far off in the haze. To the north, the wilderness is darker, more jagged, the shapes of mountains and valleys fractured and wild. In the dim light, you can almost believe that the wall really does separate two different worlds. As you walk, the sound of your own footsteps becomes a kind of rhythm, stone, 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 pause, each step an anchor in the stillness. The wall's breath, if it has one, is slow, patient, unhurried. It feels as though it has been waiting for centuries, and it can wait centuries more. You think back to everything you've seen. The strange discs, the symbols etched deep into stone, the hidden hatches and the sealed well, the map in the journal, and finally, the massive metal gate. Piece by piece, they have formed something more than just a story in your mind. They have formed a question that refuses to leave you. What if this wall is not only a barrier, not only a prison, but a memory? What if it was built as much to remind as to contain? You pause and rest your hands on the parapet, feeling the cold stone beneath your fingers. The wind brushes past your face, and in the hush of this high place, you imagine you can hear the voices of those who built it, not as words, but as the echo of their presence. People who moved stone by hand, who carved warnings into walls, who stood watch night after night without ever truly knowing whether what they guarded against was real, or only a story told to keep them vigilant. And then another thought comes, quiet but insistent. What if they did know? Your mind begins to weave together fragments of other histories' walls built in far-off lands, myths of barriers raised against darkness, stories of sleeping things sealed away. Always the same pattern, a great effort to keep something from crossing a line. Always the same ending, the keepers vanish, the watchers stop watching, the reason is lost. And yet the barrier remains. The first pale light of dawn catches the frost on the wall's surface, turning it into a ribbon of white fire stretching away into the distance. You can see the next tower ahead, its shape softened by the haze, and beyond it, the wall dips into another valley before climbing toward even higher peaks. As you approach the tower, you realize it's larger than most you've seen, its base reinforced with huge, smooth blocks, unlike the rougher stones above them. A single doorway stands open, facing south, and when you step inside, the air is warmer than you expect. The walls are lined with narrow shelves, most of them empty, but a few still hold objects wrapped in faded cloth. You unwrap one carefully and find a small clay tablet covered in markings. Spirals, broken circles, and a cluster of dots arranged like a constellation. The surface is worn, the edges chipped, but the patterns are still sharp enough to trace with your fingers. Another bundle holds a piece of metal no larger than your palm, flat and thin, with the same designs faintly etched into it. Unlike the clay, the metal is untarnished, as if it has been protected from the centuries. You hold it to the light, and the markings seem to catch the dawn in a way that makes them almost glow. On the far wall of the tower is a single inscription, carved deeper than any you've seen before. Remember the first closing? You stand before it for a long time, your breath slowing. The words carry weight you can feel but not yet fully understand. The first closing implying there was more than one, and if there was a first, perhaps there could be another. You step back outside, the sky now painted with the first true colours of morning. The light spills across the land, and for a moment the wall looks almost ordinary again. Just stone, just history, just the work of human hands. But you know better now. You've walked too far, seen too much. As you resume your journey, you feel the presence of the wall more strongly than ever, not as an obstacle, but as a companion. It stretches ahead of you like a road through time, carrying the weight of secrets, older than the empire that claimed to build it. The wind rises, lifting your hair and carrying with it a sound that could almost be mistaken for words. You turn toward the north, toward the wilderness beyond, and you think you hear it again, not clearly, but enough to feel it in your chest. It's not a threat, not a promise, just a reminder. Whatever lies beyond the wall is still there, and whatever it is, the wall is still holden, for now. The morning brightens, the sun climbing slowly over the mountains, but its warmth never truly reaches you here on the high stones. The air is crisp and clear, sharpening every shadow and detail along the wall. In the sunlight, the frost that coated the stones melts into thin rivulets of water, trickling through cracks and running down the parapets. It glitters for a moment before vanishing, leaving only damp patches darkening the stone. Your steps are slower now, not because of fatigue, but because you find yourself looking more often over your shoulder. The memory of the gate still lingers, the way it hummed under your touch, the strange spirals shifting just beneath its surface. It had felt like an answer, but to what question, you still can't decide. The wall descends into a long, gentle slope, and for a while you walk without seeing a single tower. The The stillness is broken only by the occasional cry of a distant bird, or the faint rustle of wind moving through the dry grass beyond the wall. Here, the stones seem older, less uniform, more weathered, the mortar worn away in places so that small plants have taken root between them. These stretches feel untouched by restoration, as though left deliberately in their original state. At the bottom of the slope you find something you haven't seen before, a gap. Not a breach where the wall has fallen, but a deliberate opening, its sides smoothed and reinforced. The passage is narrow and leads down into a shallow depression between two low ridges. Inside, the ground is bare, the soil cracked and pale. In the centre of this space stands a single stone monolith. It is not part of the wall, but older, much older. Its surface is rough and pitted, but you can see traces of carvings that have almost vanished under the erosion of centuries. The most visible is the broken circle again, though here it is incomplete, the lower half swallowed by the earth. You walk slowly around the monolith, running your fingers along its surface. On the side facing north, the carvings are different lines radiating outward, intersecting with spirals and jagged shapes. They feel chaotic compared to the deliberate geometry you've seen elsewhere. Kneeling, you brush away some of the dirt at the base. Beneath it, you find more markings sharper than the rest. These look newer, as though someone returned here long after the monolith was first placed to add their own message. You can't read the characters, but the straight vertical strokes are familiar. They match the script in the journal you found earlier. Standing again, you step back toward the wall and glance up at its height. From here, it feels less like a defensive structure and more like the rim of a massive vessel, enclosing this strange hollow as if sealing something inside. You rejoin the wall and continue on, and soon the land begins to rise again. The climb is gradual at first, but the higher you go, the more the air changes, thinner, colder, sharper in your lungs. The vegetation thins as well, until the slopes are nothing but rock and scattered patches of lichen. At the crest of the hill, you find a tower unlike any you've seen before. It is circular, its walls thicker, the roof still intact. The entrance faces east, catching the morning light, and above the door is an arch carved with the now familiar broken circle, flanked by two jagged lines. Inside, the space is lit by narrow windows that let in beams of pale light. The floor is inlaid with stone tiles arranged in a spiral pattern that starts at the entrance and winds inward to a raised platform at the centre. Upon the platform sits a low pedestal, and on it a shallow bronze bowl filled with water. The water is still and perfectly clear. You lean over it and see your reflection staring back, but faintly distorted slightly by the curved surface of the bowl. For a moment, you think you see movement in the reflection that doesn't match your own shadows passing somewhere behind you. You turn quickly, but the tower is empty. You return your gaze to the water and notice something else. The spiral pattern in the floor continues inside the bowl, etched into the bronze itself. It draws your eyes inward until they settle on the very centre, where a single dot has been engraved. It feels like a map, though of what you can't say. Leaving the tower, you pause outside to look north again. The wilderness stretches endlessly, the distant peaks hazy under the pale light. You wonder how far the wall continues, and whether anyone has truly walked its full length in the modern age without interruption. Perhaps those who try don't always return. The next stretch is narrower, the parapets lower, and the wall hugs the contours of the land tightly, almost as if shielding itself from view. In certain places the stone is darker, the joins more precise, as if pieces of something much older have been incorporated into the newer structure. You begin to notice a pattern. Every time the wall passes close to one of these older sections, there is a tower nearby, and inside that tower, a sign or carving that repeats what you have already seen. The broken circle, the spirals, the jagged lines. It is as if the wall itself is leaving a trail, repeating the same language again and again for anyone who knows how to read it. And maybe you think that is the point. Maybe the wall is not meant to speak to everyone, only to those who will follow it far enough, patiently enough, to see the message for what it is. By the time the sun is high, you can see another, unusual structure ahead. It isn't a tower this time, but a large flat platform jutting outward from the wall, like a balcony over the wilderness. From a distance, it looks precarious, but as you approach, you see that it is anchored deep into the rock below, its surface smooth and unbroken. Stepping onto it, you feel the sudden openness around you, the sheer drop on three sides, the wind rushing up from far below. It's dizzying, but the view is unmatched, the wall snaking away over ridges and valleys, disappearing into a pale horizon. And far, far to the north you see something else, a glint, brief, sharp, metallic. You don't know what it is, but it catches the light in a way nothing natural could. It vanishes a moment later, leaving only the shifting shadows of the mountains. You stand there for a long time, the wind biting at your face, wondering if the wall's story will ever truly end, or if it only leads deeper into questions that will never be fully answered. Eventually you step back onto the wall, the sound of your footsteps joining once more with the long, patient rhythm of stone. And the journey continues. The balcony platform fades behind you, swallowed by the winding spine of the wall as you press onward. The wind is steady now, low and unbroken, carrying the faint scent of cold stone and distant snow. Overhead, the skies are pale blue, so clear that every ridge and valley in the far north is etched sharply against the horizon. The air feels thinner here, the altitude working its way into your breathing, slowing your steps and making the world seem quieter, heavier. The wall dips into another saddle between two ridges, its path flanked by towers spaced so closely together they seem like the teeth of a giant comb. Unlike the other towers you've passed, these are shorter, squatter, with walls thicker than you'd think necessary. They lean slightly inward toward the walkway, creating a corridor of stone that feels almost like a tunnel without a roof. Your footsteps echo strangely here, the sound bouncing back in a way that makes it hard to tell where it's coming from. Every few steps you hear something else beneath your own rhythm, a faint tapping, irregular but persistent. You stop, listening. The sound continues for a moment, then fades completely, leaving only the hush of the wind. At the base of the next tower, you find a doorway that has been bricked over. The bricks are newer than the surrounding wall, their mortar still pale and clean compared to the weathered stone. Set into the centre of this sealed entrance is a small metal plate, square and tarnished. The surface bears an inscription in an unfamiliar script, vertical strokes with small diagonal marks, the same style you saw in the journals. Beneath it, a single line in a language you can read. Sealed on the third closing. The words stop you cold. Third, not first, not second. Third. The inscription does not say what was closed, or whether it still lies beyond this sealed doorway, but the implication gnaws at you. You keep walking, and soon the wall bends sharply, wrapping around a sheer cliff face before climbing again. The path is narrow here, the drop on the northern side so steep that even the wind hesitates before crossing it. You keep your eyes ahead, following the line of the stones until the wall widens into a strange circular space, unlike any you've seen before. It is a ring of stone set directly into the walkway, about 20 feet across, the centre marked by the broken circle symbol. Around the outer edge, deep grooves form a perfect pattern of interlocking arcs. Inside those arcs are small recesses, each holding what looks like a carved stone tablet. Some are intact, their surfaces etched with spirals and lines, but others are shattered, the fragments scattered across the walkway as if someone had tried to destroy them. You kneel beside one of the intact tablets, tracing the design with your fingers. The grooves are shallow, the symbols repeating in a way that feels deliberate, almost like a code. Beneath the stone, you can feel a subtle vibration, faint but steady, like the hum of the metal gate you left behind. A gust of wind whirls through the circle, carrying a sound you cannot quite place, half whistle, half sigh. For a moment the air feels charged, almost electric. Then it passes, leaving the place silent once more. You rise and continue on. The wall climbs again, the slope steep enough to make your legs ache. The towers thin out here, replaced by occasional stone markers set into the parapets. Each marker is carved with a single symbol, some you recognize, others new. One marker bears a carving that looks like an eye within a triangle, its gaze fixed northward. Another shows a cluster of lines radiating from a central point, like the spokes of a wheel. Near the crest of the ridge, you find something even more unusual. A section of the wall where the stones on the northern side are not solid, but latticed intricate patterns cut into them like the screens of an ancient temple. Through the openings you can see the land beyond, a vast dark expanse stretching toward distant peaks, the shapes of valleys and ravines like cracks in a great slab of stone. You stand there for a while, looking through the lattice, and the idea comes unbidden. Perhaps the wall is not just a barrier. Perhaps it is a window too, a way for those within to watch what lies beyond without crossing over. The thought lingers as you resume your climb. By the time you reach the top, the wall has leveled out, and in the distance you can see another structure unlike the others. This one is tall and narrow, with a pointed roof and sides that slope outward near the base. It looks more like a monument than a tower, its stone a deep reddish hue that stands out against the grey of the wall. When you reach it, you find no doorway, only 4 smooth faces, each engraved with a different design. The northern face bears the broken circle, but this time it is doubled 2 circles overlapping, their centres aligned. The eastern face shows a spiral surrounded by jagged lines. The southern face is plain except for a single vertical groove running from top to bottom. And the western face. The western face bears a map. Not of land, but of the wall itself. The line runs across the stone marked with tiny symbols at intervals. Some of these symbols you've seen before, the eye, the jagged lines, the spirals. Others are new, a shape like a flame, a pattern of 3 interlocked triangles. One point on the line is marked differently than all the others, a single, unbroken circle. Your finger hovers over it, and you feel the faintest pulse beneath the stone, so subtle you might mistake it for your own heartbeat. You wonder if this mark represents the gate you saw, or something even older, something deeper in the wall's memory. The wind shifts, carrying with it the smell of snow. Clouds are gathering on the horizon now, soft and white, their edges lit by the afternoon sun. You take one last look at the monument before moving on, the map burned into your memory. The path ahead narrows again, curving along the spine of the ridge. Each step feels heavier, as though the wall itself is testing your resolve to keep going. And yet, you know you will. Because whatever truth lies at the end of this journey, it is not something you can turn away from now. The wall has led you too far, and its silence is asking you to listen just a little longer. The sky has paled to a washed-out blue by the time you leave the monument behind, and thin clouds drift like worn silk across the sun. The wind has softened, but the air holds that quiet chill that slips through layers and finds the spaces between your breaths. The wall curves gently along the ridge, then tilts downward toward a place where the mountain seems to have swallowed part of it. A slump of stone and soil, as if the earth took one slow breath, and the wall bowed to it. You pick your way along the parapet until you reach the sagging portion, and see, tucked into the hollow, a gap low to the ground. It isn't wide, but it is deep, a dark mouth under the fallen stones. You crouch and peer in. The smell that rises is not the open-air scent of dust and weather. It's older, colder, with the mineral tang of underground water and something else, like iron left to sleep for centuries. You slip through sideways, shoulders brushing rough stone, and lean into the dim. The space opens almost at once. What looked like a narrow crevice gives way to a chamber whose ceiling hovers just above your head. Your eyes adjust slowly. You can make out smooth walls on either side, not the rough tumble of a collapse, but deliberate planes meeting at clean angles. You step carefully, hands brushing the walls. The surface is not brick. It's some darker stone fitted without mortar. The seams are so fine they're almost invisible, and where the light touches them, the lines gleam faintly, as if the stone itself remembers a hidden polish. The floor is slightly concave, draining toward a slot that runs down the middle like a buried canal. Under your feet, the hollow, even thud of your steps carries farther than it should, as though there's more emptiness beneath this emptiness. You pause and kneel. In the thin dust over the floor, faint marks cross and recross the stone. Arcs, triangles, the broken circle repeated at a scale so small you'd miss it if you weren't already trained by the wall to see it everywhere. When you exhale, your breath lifts a film of powder and reveals a longer mark beneath a groove etched with purposeful pressure, the kind a rope or chain might leave after a long pull. On your right, the chamber continues, gently curving until sight begins to fail. On your left, the wall is interrupted by an opening just wide enough to slip through. No door, simply a rectangle cut with perfect edges. You pass through and find a corridor running parallel to the wall above. At regular intervals, square recesses are cut into the wall at hip height, each with a lip, each empty except for a fringe of dust. They look like places where something was once kept, arranged and ready. You touch one lip and feel a faint warmth trapped in the stone, a ghost of sun conducted down from the world above, or the memory of the hands that used to move here. The corridor bends and lowers, then opens into a second chamber, longer and taller than the first. Here, the floor is divided by narrow channels that cross like a grid. At their intersections sit small raised nodes, pale stone caps with shallow cups on top. All but one are empty. In the single cup that isn't, there lies a thin disc of metal, no larger than a coin. You lift it and turn it between your fingers. It's light and cold, etched with the tight braided lines you've seen in the journals. Not letters exactly, but a pattern of intention. When you angle it toward the meagre light that filters in from the entrance, the lines appear to move for an instant only like ripples catching wind and then lying flat again. You set the disc back where you found it, not from fear, but from the sense that this place has its own order and you are a guest. At the far end, a short stair drops into a third space, and here the air shifts. It is cooler and damp, rich with the smell of old water. The walls are closer, the ceiling lower. In this narrower place you hear sound, a distant drip, sure and slow, and beneath it a low, continuous murmur that could be the movement of underground flow or the patient exhale of stone. You still yourself, listening for rhythm. What comes to you is not quite rhythm, not quite randomness either, like wind moving through a forest too far away to see. Your hand skims the left wall and finds a band of incised marks running waist-high, the length of the corridor. The band is a story told without words, a procession of circles, whole, broken, doubled, then the set of jagged lines, then spirals nested inside one another until they close around a point so small it's almost not there. At intervals the band breaks around panels of smoother stone, and on those panels are shallow bas-reliefs, watchtowers like the ones above, but paired with shapes you've never seen, long-bodied things with many limbs, some bent backward, some splayed. The proportions wrong in a way that makes you think of deep sea creatures drawn by someone who never saw the ocean. The reliefs are not violent. They're simply present, like diagrams. Under one tower, a trio of interlocked triangles is carved with care, each triangle holding a tiny dot at its center. Beyond the reliefs, the corridor arrives at a set of steps rising again, worn in the middle by long use. You climb. The air warms a little. A thin seam of light draws a bright line across the next landing. You press your fingers into it and feel the rasp of grit and the coolness of air from above. A moment's work with your shoulder and forearm, and an old stone panel gives way with a breath of dust that tastes like chalk. You cough once, twice, then push the panel outward. You step up and out into a small roofless courtyard walled by low parapets, an internal cell inside the body of the wall. The sky is a narrow rectangle overhead. The light has shifted while you were below. Afternoon leans toward evening, and the clouds have thickened into a soft, even sheet. The stones around you are familiar again, rougher, more recent, the language of the wall's later centuries, and yet set flush with the floor in the courtyard centre, there's a slab of the darker, older stone. It bears a single mark, a circle unbroken, filled with a shallow spiral that reaches the centre and stops, like a finger laid across the lips of time. You place your palm on the slab. The pulse is there, not urgent, not strong, but present and steady, as if the ground itself keeps count of something no one above remembers to measure anymore. The sensation steadies you. It feels like proof, not of a monster or a myth, but of intention, a design carried beneath the visible wall the way a melody threads under the surface of a lullaby. You move to the courtyard's edge and look out through a narrow embrasure. The northern world opens beneath you, a depth of valleys, a wide run of shadowed land. In the middle distance you see, or think you see, regularity, lines too straight, angles too exact, a suggestion of terraces or rings half sunk and half erased. The old stories spoke of labyrinths beneath mountains, of tunnels that spiral to a core. Perhaps the labyrinth was not beneath a mountain at all. Perhaps it is beneath the wall, following it, doubling it, a second spine coiled under the first. You descend again through the panel and take the corridor the other way, back toward where the underground architecture ran parallel to your steps above. The sense of a plan grows stronger the farther you walk. The channels, the nodes, the recesses, nothing here is accidental. Places where energy could be caught and moved. Places where something could be sealed and fed and kept. The thought does not frighten you. It simply clarifies what your knights on the stones have been saying. Defense is only part of the story. Containment is the rest. And below containment lies caretaking. The long, quiet maintenance of something too large to bring into the day. When you finally return to the first chamber and slide back through the gap to the light, the air on your face feels different, thinner and freer. You stand and brush grey dust from your hands, then look along the wall with new eyes. The stones you've walked for days are not just the top of a structure. They are the surface of a system that goes down and down, as precise beneath as it is vast above. You picture the hidden passages running like capillaries under the battlements, joining at chambers and nodes and seals, the way roots meet under old trees to share water far from sight. You begin to walk again, and as you do, the steady rhythm returns, heel, toe, breath, stone. A low wind shivers through the crenellations and tugs a thread of hair across your cheek. Somewhere ahead, a tower lifts like a fingertip pointing at the coming weather. The first grains of snow drift out of the dim clouds, lazy and few, and vanish on the warmth of your skin. The wall carries your steps along its curve. To your right, mountains. To your left, a country sleeping. Above, the soft white of a sky ready to close. Below, the quiet labyrinth, pulsing, patient, ancient as the fear that taught hands to stack stone, and the hope that taught them to keep stacking after fear receded. You do not hurry, there is no need. The secret isn't running, and the wall doesn't tire. Each tower you pass now is both itself and a shadow cast by the rooms beneath. Each symbol you see above has its echo below, carved on a hidden lintel, etched into a buried slab. You think of the inscription you found near the sealed doorway, sealed on the third closing, and you wonder, for the first time without dread, if there was a third, what did the second look like? What did the first? Did they happen in daylight with banners and orders, or under stars with whispers and songs to keep hands steady on cold iron? Snow swirls once in a gust and then stops. The clouds part just enough for a pale wash of light to touch the stones. You rest your palm on the parapet ordinary, rough, loyal stone, and feel beneath it the faintest answering thrum from the deeper wall. Two pulses layered, one old, one older, the same wall twice, the same promise, spoken in two voices. You walk on, letting the promise lead you toward the next bend, the next tower, the next quiet room waiting under the world. The snow begins in earnest as you round the next bend, soft flakes drifting in slow spirals through the still air. They land on the stones and cling for a moment before melting into dark spots, leaving the wall damp and glistening under the flat light. Your breath fogs in front of you, curling upward to meet the low ceiling of cloud. The world is hushed in that particular way only snowfall can bring, as if everything is leaning in to listen. The path narrows again, winding along the side of a ridge where the stones have been worn smooth by centuries of wind and frost. To the north, the wilderness lies muted beneath a pale veil, the lines of valleys and forests blurred. Somewhere out there is the glint you saw earlier, and the terraces, and the shapes half swallowed by shadow. But in this moment they feel impossibly far away, as if they belong to another season entirely. Ahead, the wall rises toward one last visible tower before the ridge dips into cloud. It is a tall, slender structure, its upper battlements half collapsed, giving it the look of a crown with missing points. The climb toward it is slow, the stones slick under your boots. As you approach, you notice that this tower's entrance is not at ground level. Instead, a narrow set of steps has been carved into the inside of the wall itself, leading up to a wooden door reinforced with iron bands. The wood is ancient but intact, the iron dulled to a deep brown. You push it open and step into a chamber high above the ridge. The wind whines through the broken battlements above, carrying with it the fine, dry cold of oncoming night. Inside, the space is bare except for a single object at its centre, a large, flat stone set into the floor. It is darker than the surrounding flagstones, almost black and polished until it reflects what little light filters through the arrow slits. On its surface, carved deep enough to catch shadow, is the full circle, not broken, not doubled, not spiraled, whole. The sight of it makes something inside you go still. It is the first time you have seen the symbol complete. You kneel beside it, tracing its edge with your fingertips. The stone feels warmer than the air, faintly alive, as if holding some deep, slow-burning ember within. Around the edge of the circle, in a band no wider than your thumb, runs a sequence of smaller carvings, spirals, jagged lines, triangles, and other shapes you've seen scattered all along the wall. Here, they are gathered together at last, arranged in an order that feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. It occurs to you that this might be a key not the kind that fits a lock, but the kind that fits an idea or a memory. Perhaps the builders of the wall left it here for someone who had walked far enough to understand the language. Perhaps they knew that most would never make it this far. You sit back on your heels and look out through the narrow window slit to the north. Snow has blurred the distance into a soft expanse. The ridges and valleys dissolved into whiteness. If there is anything out there, anything the wall was built to contain, it is hidden now, sleeping under the winter sky. And yet, you feel it, not in the form of fear or dread, but as a presence steady, patient, unchanged by the passing of years. The wall is not just holding something back, it is keeping something alive. You rise and step out onto the tower's outer walkway. From here, the wall stretches away in both directions, vanishing into the snow and mist. To the south, the land within is calm and still. To the north, the wilderness waits. The divide is as sharp as ever, and yet it feels less like a line of separation now, and more like a thread connecting two halves of a larger whole. You think of the gate, of the underground chambers, of the discs and symbols and carvings. You think of the inscriptions, first closing, third closing, and the unspoken possibility of a fourth. And you realize that whatever the truth is, it will not come all at once. The wall will give it to you as it gives everything, piece by piece, tower by tower, step by step. Snow gathers on your shoulders and in your hair. The wind moves around you like a slow tide. Somewhere deep within the wall, the hum continues, as steady and unyielding as the pulse of the earth itself. You place your hand on the cold stone of the parapet, feeling the rough texture under your palm. You imagine all the hands that have done the same over the centuries, builders, soldiers, travellers, watchers. Each of them left something here, even if only the faintest trace of their warmth. The snow begins to fall thicker now, the world growing softer, quieter. You turn back toward the doorway, ready to continue your journey along the wall's spine. The path ahead is uncertain, but you know this. Whatever lies at the end, it will not be the end of the story. The wall has been here too long, kept its secrets too well, for any single moment to hold its whole truth. And so you walk on, each step a promise to keep listening, to keep watching, to keep following the silent thread that binds stone to shadow, shadow to memory, memory to the deep and endless past. Somewhere ahead, another tower waits, another mark in the stone, another quiet answer disguised as a question. Until then, the wall holds, and you walk.